A very warm good morning to all of you. Dear students, once again I would like to welcome all of you to a new session of the history class. Today we are going to continue with the same chapter number 10, the First World War, part 4. Do you remember what we were discussing in the previous classes? In the first class we were discussing about why do we call this war as the First World War. And we were discussing the number of reasons behind the naming of First World War. Then later we were discussing about what were the different causes which led to the emergence of the First World War. What were the reasons? So their first reason we have already discussed it. The first reason behind the emergence of the World War was nationalism and imperialism. And there we have seen how nationalism led to the war. And secondly, we were discussing about division of Europe into two hostile groups. And third one, we were discussing about Saar crisis. So these were the main three reasons behind the emergence, behind the beginning of First World War. And again we have seen slowly one by one number of countries they have joined in the war. Actually the war started between Austria and Serbia, and later one by one a number of countries joined in the war, and it came to an end with the decision taken by three prominent countries, three powerful countries: Britain, France and USA. These three countries together started a military operation against their enemy, so that all other countries who were fighting against these countries, they were not able to face the consequences of the war. They were not able to fight against these countries. As a result, one by one the countries they have withdrawn from the war. But it was not the actual reason, so it was not the last step of the end of the war. The end of the war finally took place with Treaty of Versailles, or we can say the last step of the First World War. It came to an end with a treaty, and this treaty is being known as Treaty of Versailles. So in this class, or today, we are going to discuss about Treaty of Versailles and its different terms and conditions. So here we are going to begin. In 1919, June 28th, victorious powers met at Versailles, Paris. So who are the victorious powers? Like USA, Britain and France. These were the three different prominent countries, or the victorious powers, who made an end to the First World War. And how it happened? The President of USA, Woodrow Wilson, the Prime Minister of Britain, Lloyd George, and the Prime Minister of France, George Clemenceau. So these three prominent leaders, in the presence of the other countries who were joined with them in the First World War, they met at Versailles, a suburb city at Paris. And they have made a number of discussions and finally made some decisions about the First World War. But one another factor we need to remember here: defeated countries were not represented. That means the defeated countries like Germany, Austria and so many other countries were there and their allies. All those countries were considered as the defeated countries, and there were no representation from those countries. Even Russia, who was one of the prominent member who also have actively taken place or taken part in the war, even Russia also excluded from the conference. So the leaders of the victorious countries, they have signed a treaty, and this treaty is being known as Treaty of Versailles. And with the Treaty of Versailles, First World War came to an end, or finally, ultimately, the war came to an end with the signing of Treaty of Versailles. This treaty is designed for stopping a new war. Anyway, First World War took place and the whole world, the whole countries in the world witnessed its consequences. They have seen its huge destruction, and they were knowing that if it is going to a second world war, it will come to an end of the world. So they have made a treaty, and the reason behind the formation or the signing of the treaty was just for stopping the whole countries from a new war. Basis was the 14 points given by Woodrow Wilson. So the basis of this Treaty of Versailles, it is 14 points or the 14 different terms and conditions presented by Woodrow Wilson. So let's see what were the different terms put forward by Woodrow Wilson, terms of the treaty. First one, declared Germany guilty of aggression. So finally, the victorious countries made a declaration that Germany is the reason behind the emergence of the First World War. Even the First World War not begun by Germany. Actually, it is started between Austria and Serbia. One by one, all the different nations joined in the war. But still, after all these kinds of destruction, all these activities done by all the countries together, they have declared guilty on Germany, and they have told Germany is the main reason behind the First World War. Since Germany declared as guilty, Germany was required to pay the loss and damages. Suppose if you are becoming a reason behind the destruction of something, of course you have to pay it back. So in the same way, here when Germany declared as guilty, or all the nations together declared Germany as reason behind the First World War, they asked Germany to pay the loss and damages which took place in the First World War. Since Germany declared guilty, they have to pay for the loss and damages. Near about $33 billion the victorious countries demanded from Germany, and they have to pay their debt either in the form of cash or in the means of things like coal and other resources. So for Germany it was a huge amount, and it was a huge loss for Germany. Germany also already faced a number of consequences and destructions due to the First World War. Beyond that, again they were being exploited by the victorious countries. And the third point is, area of Rhine Valley was to be demilitarized, which means west of Rhine to be occupied by Allied troops for 15 years. That means the countries which were coming under Allied troops, or a group of military will be appointed, a group of administration will be done. Which means, take the example like the representatives from America, Britain and France, and they together will be ruling the West Rhine for 15 years, which means they can collect the resources of West Rhine and they can use it for the growth of their country. So it was one another terms and conditions according to the Treaty of Versailles. Germany lost its places like Alsace-Lorraine to France. So France was one of the prominent country, one of the victorious countries. So France got Alsace-Lorraine. Then again, Eupen et Malmedy to Belgium, and again Schleswig to Denmark. So all these places were belonged to Germany, and now Germany lost all these places to different countries as they were being declared, as they have got declared as guilty, and they have to pay for the loss and damages made by them in the First World War. So Germany lost all these places, and all these places were given to France, Belgium and Denmark respectively. It was not an end. Again, Germany gave up parts of her pre-war territory to Denmark, Belgium and Poland. So again some other parts which were coming directly under the Germany before the war, those territories which were coming under Germany, and they have given, or the according to the treaty, it was given to the victorious countries Denmark, Belgium and Poland. Coal mines in the German area called Saar were given to France and the area to be governed by League of Nations. So one of the main resource of Germany was its huge collection of coals. There were a number of coal mines. So all those coal mines were given to France, and those areas were directly coming under the governance of League of Nations. Germany lost all her colonies to the victorious allies like Britain, Belgium, South Africa and Portugal. So finally we can see, once all the treaties were against Germany, again the 8th point says that German colonies in the Pacific and the areas under her control in China were given to Japan. 9th point says that German army was restricted to 1 lakh soldiers and navy was limited to 15,000 men and 24 ships. Air force and submarines were banned. And the 10th point says that complete independence to Belgium, Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia. And the last point says that Covenant of the League of Nations was added to the Treaty of Versailles. So after all, when we go through all these different points, the terms and conditions, we can see that the all victorious countries declared Germany as guilty, and they have used Germany to get back or to get their laws and restrictions caused by the First World War, and Germany became the victim of all this. We can see all these 11 different points which put forward by Woodrow Wilson was mainly focusing on exploiting Germany. Even though we need to remember one more thing, the war was not declared or started by Germany. It was between Austria and Serbia. So here we can see, but we can say only one thing: the first member who joined in the war, it was Germany, which means Austria declared war on Serbia, followed by them Germany declared war on Russia. So that's why in the Treaty of Versailles the victorious countries declared Germany as the reason behind the beginning of First World War. Again we will go to the point, the 9th one. German army was restricted to 1 lakh. Just imagine a country who was having very powerful army, now it has got limited to 1 lakh soldiers, and navy was limited to 15,000 men and 24 ships. They were not permitted to exceed, or they were not permitted to increase their power, and air force and submarines were banned. It was not permitted for them. Then complete independence to Belgium, Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia. And all these terms and conditions were really against German and Germany. So we can say that, of course, just imagine if our country is being declared as guilty in a war, and the other countries started to exploit our resources in order to meet their laws. So in such cases, what will happen? Of course we will feel hurt. It will be something like questioning our reputation. So same way German people also felt so bad about the Treaty of Versailles. So when we deal with the next chapter, that is about the Second World War, we will see what were the different reasons behind the emergence of the Second World War. And one of the main reasons behind the emergence of the Second World War was Treaty of Versailles and the impact which made in the minds of the German people. So All these terms and conditions were against German and Germany and the culture of Germany. So finally Woodrow Wilson had made an end of his treaty with the Covenant of the League of Nations, which means an organization. League of Nations means it is an organization, or which was an organization which were functioning in the world in order to stop the countries from going to, or countries going to, a second world war. But League of Nations was not a successful one. It was a failure. That's why in the world a second world war took place. So with the Covenant of the League of Nations, he has signed the treaty, and this treaty is being known as Treaty of Versailles. So dear students, I hope that you have got a very clear idea about what we were discussing from the first class still today, especially about this chapter, the different reasons behind the war, and finally how the war came to an end. How was the end of the war? The First World War came to an end with the Treaty of Versailles. So here we are winding up this chapter. These are the main points which we want to discuss, which I want to share with you about this particular chapter, and I hope that you have got a very clear idea about it. So here we are concluding this chapter, winding up, and in the next class we will be coming up, or we will be meeting again with a new topic, a new chapter. Till then, I would like to sign off. Thank you.